For nearly 2 years, I sent thousands of dollars home every single month, money for bills, for my dad's medicine, to fix the leaking roof. I sent it quietly through my younger brother's bank account. He lived closer to our parents. He promised he'd hand it to them in cash. I trusted him. After all, he was the golden child, the one my parents always praised. And me? I was the disappointment, the one they constantly compared. "You'll never be as good as your brother," they'd say. I never argued. I stayed quiet. All I wanted was to help without asking for thanks. But on my mother's birthday, in a living room filled with relatives, she turned to me and said, almost like a slap across the face, "You'll never measure up to your brother." The room laughed. They toasted to him the perfect son. I stood up. And for the first time in my life, I said no more. "Then let him pay the bills," I said, "because I won't be sending a single dollar from now on." Silence. My mother blinked, confused. "What money? You've never sent us anything." I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and showed them the truth. In seconds, their entire illusion collapsed. This is a story about betrayal, favoritism, and how I turned the tables at a family party. If you've ever been overlooked in your own home, this is the story you've been waiting for. Emily Parker was 32 years old, a software engineer living in Austin, Texas. She had built her life from the ground up, quietly, steadily, with little fanfare. Reserved by nature, she had always preferred order over attention, hard work over drama. For years, she had focused on her career, living in a modest apartment and working long hours behind a screen. She didn't crave the spotlight. All she wanted was to live with dignity and help the people she loved. That was why, despite the distance, she had stayed connected to her family, especially her aging parents back in rural Virginia. It was the second weekend in October, and Emily was back in her childhood town for the first time in nearly a year. She had flown in with her boyfriend Ben to attend her mother's 65th birthday. The house she had grown up in still looked the same, white siding, a porch swing that creaked in the wind, and flower beds that her mother insisted on maintaining herself. The smell of pumpkin spice candles filled the air, and the living room was decorated with gold streamers, balloons, and a big banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Mom." Ben had never met her family in person before, and Emily had warned him that things might be a bit lopsided. "They adore my sister," she had said on the plane. "Me, I'm just there." Ben had smiled, holding her hand, telling her he looked forward to meeting them all. Still, Emily's shoulders were tense from the moment they pulled into the driveway. She hadn't wanted drama. All she hoped for was a warm moment with her parents, maybe even a chance to feel seen again. Inside the house, Chloe was already the center of attention. Her younger sister stood in the kitchen wearing a fitted navy blue dress, laughing effortlessly as relatives circled around her. Chloe had always had that effect on people, charm that didn't require effort, compliments that followed her like perfume. She embraced Emily casually, as if they'd only been apart a few days, and introduced Ben around like she was the hostess of the evening. Emily, meanwhile, set her gift down on the table. She had spent weeks researching the perfect present for their mother, a compact digital camera with a wide screen and simple buttons. Her mother had once mentioned wanting to take pictures of her garden and grandchildren, and Emily had remembered. She even had the camera preloaded with a memory card and a few photos from Austin, hoping it would feel more personal. But no one asked about the gift. In fact, no one even seemed to notice it. The focus remained on Chloe, who had apparently brought a decorative mirror set for their mother, something she boasted about buying from a boutique in Charlottesville. "Isn't it just perfect for the hallway?" Chloe asked loudly, and the aunts and uncles nodded in admiration. Their mother, Linda, hugged Chloe and said, "You always know just what I like." Emily sat beside Ben in the living room, sipping her tea in silence. The room was filled with chatter, laughter, clinking glasses. She could feel the weight of invisibility settle on her shoulders again. At one point, Uncle Mike raised a toast. "To Chloe, who always looks out for Mom and Dad. She's the heart of this family." Emily's throat tightened. She didn't want recognition, not really. but to be erased entirely, it stung. Then in the middle of it all, Linda turned to Emily. Her tone wasn't cruel exactly, but it carried the edge of something that had built up for years. "Emily?" She said, her voice just loud enough to hush the room. "I do wish you could be a little more like your sister. Chloe's always thinking about the family." The words hit like a slap. Ben's hand froze around his glass. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks, her pulse thudding in her ears. She stood up slowly, placing her cup on the table. The room quieted. Chloe looked up from her phone. Her mother's eyes were expectant, as if waiting for Emily to nod and agree like she always had. But this time Emily didn't nod. "If Chloe's the one who thinks about the family," she said, her voice calm but resolute, "then from now on, let her pay the bills. I'm done sending money." The room was silent. A fork dropped onto a plate somewhere. Her mother blinked as if trying to understand the words. "What money?" Linda asked, genuinely confused. "You've never sent us anything." Emily reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She opened her banking app, tapped a few times, then held the screen up for everyone to see. "For the past 2 years, I've sent $2,500 every single month, sometimes more. All to Chloe's account. Every transaction labeled for Mom and Dad." Aunt Deborah leaned in to read. Uncle Mike scratched his head. Even Chloe looked pale. Emily turned to her mother again, her voice still steady. "You said I never thought of the family, but I've been paying your mortgage, your utilities, even for Dad's medication. And you never even knew." Her mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. Ben stood beside Emily now, quietly placing a hand on her shoulder. No one in the room said a word. And just like that, everything Emily had carried in silence for 2 years was no longer invisible. Emily sat in silence as the car wound its way back from her parents' house that night. The words from her mother's mouth still echoed in her ears. "You'll never be as good as your sister." For a brief moment, she had hoped her gift might shift something. Just for once, she wanted to feel seen. But what she received instead was the same old story. And yet something inside her had changed. For the first time, she stood up for herself. And now, driving away from the very house where her childhood unfolded, all the old memories came rushing back, the small moments that shaped a lifetime of feeling forgotten. Emily Carter was born and raised in a quiet town in rural Virginia. Her parents, Robert and Linda, were hard-working people. Robert worked at the local sawmill, and Linda handled bookkeeping for a neighborhood grocery store. They weren't rich, but they were proud. Their home was modest, a 2-bedroom house with peeling white paint, a creaky porch swing, and a kitchen table that had seen decades of wear. And from the outside, their family looked like any other. But behind those walls, Emily had long known what it felt like to be invisible. 3 years after Emily was born, along came Chloe. From the start, Chloe sparkled in a way that drew everyone to her. She was the kind of child who sang before she could speak, danced in the aisles at church, and always knew what to say to make an adult laugh. With her curly blonde hair and dimpled smile, Chloe quickly became the darling of the family. The neighbors adored her. Teachers raved about her. And most of all, Robert and Linda couldn't stop singing her praises. They called Chloe our little sunbeam, or the light of the house. Linda often introduced her to others as our star performer, while Emily stood quietly behind, clutching a library book, or fidgeting with the zipper of her hoodie. From a young age, she had learned to retreat into her own world, a world of logic, invention, and silence. Emily didn't like attention. While Chloe was singing solos in the school Christmas program, Emily was in the back of the library reading about how radios worked. She had a natural knack for technology. At age 10, she fixed a broken toaster. At 11, she was disassembling old desktop computers a neighbor had thrown out. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply found joy in understanding how things functioned. But in her house, that joy was seen as odd, almost inconvenient. Her mother would wave her off with a half-hearted comment. "Why don't you go outside and play like other kids?" Emily heard it all the time. "You should be more like Chloe. She makes friends so easily." Or worse, "Chloe's the one who really brings this family together." Each comment meant, perhaps without malice, carved a deeper line between the sisters. It wasn't that Emily didn't love Chloe. She did. In fact, when they were younger, she looked up to her in many ways. But that admiration slowly turned into something more painful, a yearning to be acknowledged. There was one Christmas that Emily would never forget. She had spent weeks building a small table lamp made out of spare wires, a battery pack, and an old mason jar she had cleaned and painted. Inside, she installed a tiny LED circuit that would gently flicker when turned on. It wasn't store-bought. It didn't have ribbons or sparkle. But it was hers, something she made entirely with her own hands. She wrapped it carefully and placed it beneath the tree with a note, "To Mom from Emily. Hope this brings you light." That Christmas morning, Chloe handed out her gifts, first framed pictures she had drawn in art class, and a song she sang with a ukulele she got from school. Everyone clapped and laughed. Then Emily stepped forward holding her small package. Her mother took it with a puzzled expression and opened it slowly. She turned the jar in her hand, flicked the light on, then off, then gave a soft shrug. "Emily," she said with a sigh, "you should spend less time messing with these little gadgets and more time playing with your sister. This isn't practical." Emily didn't cry. She simply nodded, murmured okay, and walked back to the corner of the room, the warmth from the lamp glowing softly against her face as the rest of the family returned to Chloe's ukulele song. Moments like those didn't just hurt, they settled into her like sediment layer upon layer, until they hardened into something difficult to name. It wasn't jealousy, it was erasure. And no matter how much she excelled at her hobbies, or how quietly she kept to herself, Emily never quite felt like she was enough, not in their eyes. But what others saw as silence was in fact quiet strength. Emily didn't argue. She didn't rebel. She simply poured her energy into understanding the world through wires, code, and logic. She found peace in the hum of machines and the precision of programming. Unlike people, computers didn't change their minds or compare her to someone else. Yet even in those years of quiet resilience, she carried one fragile hope that one day maybe her parents would look at her and say, "We're proud of you too, Emily." That day never came. And as she sat in the car beside Ben, her eyes gazing out at the dark Virginia hills, she realized it might never come. But perhaps, just perhaps, it didn't have to. Because for the first time, she had spoken up, and she was done waiting to be noticed. She was ready to be seen on her own terms. Emily's teenage years unfolded like a quiet echo in the halls of a house that only seemed to hear one voice, Chloe's. After the silence and embarrassment of her mother's birthday party, the painful memories began flooding back to her during the long drive home from Virginia. Sitting beside Ben, who was holding her hand without a word, Emily stared out the car window, remembering a childhood that had shaped her in ways she was only beginning to fully understand. From the outside, theirs looked like a normal family, living in a small town nestled in the Appalachian foothills of Virginia. Her father, a factory worker with oil-stained hands and tired eyes, and her mother, a part-time bookkeeper who juggled numbers better than emotions, did their best to raise two daughters. But even doing their best came with blind spots and favoritism so thick it settled into the wallpaper of their home like dust no one bothered to clean. Emily was always the quiet one, reserved, observant. She read books with the intensity of someone trying to escape. She enjoyed quiet afternoons under the sycamore tree with a notebook and a pencil. She was curious about how things worked, how a fan spun, why light bulbs flickered, what was inside the television. But in a house where loud was love and glitter was glory, quiet curiosity went unnoticed. Chloe, 3 years younger, had curly golden hair, a voice like honey, and a laugh that turned heads. She sang in the church choir, danced in front of guests, and never hesitated to throw her arms around a visitor's neck. To the neighbors, she was a little ray of sunshine. To their parents, she was the crown jewel of the family. When Chloe sang Silent Night at the Christmas pageant in 5th grade, the whole family went out for dinner to celebrate. That same winter, Emily had spent weeks building a Christmas lamp using an old flashlight-colored plastic and wires she found in her father's shed. She'd wrapped it with care, placed it under the tree, and waited eagerly for her mother to open it. When she did, her reaction was a dismissive smile and a curt remark. "You should be outside playing with your sister instead of tinkering with useless junk." That sentence had echoed in Emily's mind for years. Useless junk. It was the first time she realized her love for technology and invention wasn't just misunderstood, it was disapproved of. While Chloe was praised for her charm, Emily's intelligence and creativity were reduced to hobbies, distractions, and odd behaviors that needed fixing. School wasn't any better. Emily was a straight-A student. She stayed late helping teachers ace math quizzes and even helped classmates with science projects. But the one time she brought home a certificate of academic excellence, her mother barely looked up from peeling potatoes. "That's nice, honey, but Chloe's choir recital is tomorrow. Can you help her with her outfit?" The phrase she heard most growing up was, "Emily, you're the older sister. You need to be more mature, learn to sacrifice." Sacrifice became her default mode. When Chloe wanted the last slice of cake, Emily gave it up. When Chloe was scared of the dark, Emily switched rooms. When Chloe didn't want to do chores, Emily did both their shares. It was what was expected. And when she questioned it, her mother would reply with a sigh, "Big sisters are supposed to be selfless." Over time, Emily grew inward. She stopped sharing her small victories. She built a fortress inside herself, one that only books, machines, and later code could enter. When her father brought home an old desktop computer from the recycling center, she stayed up night after night teaching herself how to fix it. There was no instruction manual, no YouTube tutorials, just a worn-down device and a girl determined to understand it. She learned to code from free online forums, practiced building websites in secret, and even fixed neighbors' devices when they broke. But no one in the family noticed. And if they did, they didn't care. At best, her interest in tech was a phase. At worst, it was something to be corrected. Her mother once said, "All this computer stuff will make you weird. You need to talk to people more like your sister." That same sister, by the time she was 16, was being driven to auditions, praised in church bulletins, and given a new phone to help her network. Emily's laptop, meanwhile, was secondhand, and missing the E key. But in the shadows of comparison, Emily's dream was quietly blooming. She didn't want fame or applause. She wanted freedom. She wanted a life where her worth wasn't measured against someone else's spotlight. She dreamed of a city apartment filled with humming gadgets, a job where people respected her ideas, and weekends where she could finally exhale without hearing, "Why can't you be more like Chloe?" The pain of being unseen never turned to hatred, but it carved out a loneliness so deep it almost became her identity. And yet in those quiet moments with a circuit board or a blinking cursor on her screen, Emily felt something powerful possibility. A future. Now, years later, sitting in the passenger seat next to Ben, the truth was becoming harder to ignore. All those years of sacrifice, of quietly sending money home while Chloe got the praise, it had all come to a head. Her heart ached not just from the betrayal, but from the decades of invisibility. And yet, there was also something new inside her, a flicker of defiance. This time, Emily wouldn't be silent. This time, the forgotten daughter would no longer live in anyone's shadow. At the end of high school, while Chloe enjoyed her final year surrounded by admiration and easy praise, Emily was quietly applying for scholarships and mapping out every dollar she'd need to escape. She didn't want luxury or applause, just distance, independence, and the dignity of self-reliance. When she received her acceptance letter to the University of Texas, majoring in software engineering, she didn't even announce it at dinner. She just folded the letter and tucked it into her planner, knowing no one would ask about her plans anyway. College was no easy path. Her parents didn't offer financial help. When she gently hinted that some support would ease the burden, her mother replied, "You're the strong one, Emily. Chloe needs our help more right now." That was the last time Emily ever brought it up. She moved to Austin with 2 suitcases and a determination stitched tighter than any family bond she'd known. Her life quickly settled into a routine of classes, part-time jobs, and coding late into the night in the small studio apartment she rented on the edge of the city. By day, she attended lectures in data structures and algorithms. By evening, she served tables at a downtown diner. On weekends, she offered tutoring in math and repaired laptops for classmates and neighbors. Every cent went toward tuition, rent, and books. There was no room for error, no net to fall back on. Meanwhile, back home in Virginia, Chloe had a different journey. She'd taken a few college placement tests, failed most of them, and decided school just wasn't her thing. She moved back into the family house and declared she was starting a business, though no one quite knew what it was. She posted motivational quotes on social media, staged photos in rented outfits, and referred to herself as an entrepreneur. Whenever Emily called home, she could hear Chloe in the background laughing or giving unsolicited financial advice to their parents. Despite having no stable job and living under their roof, Chloe was still the golden daughter. Her parents described her as the one always close, always helpful. They told neighbors, "Chloe stays with us, she's the one who cares." Emily wanted to ask if they thought paying bills, struggling alone, and sacrificing sleep wasn't a form of caring. But she never did. She swallowed the sting and kept working. Once, during a brief phone call, her mother said, "Emily, I wish you were more like your sister. She's always here making sure we're okay. You're off in that big city chasing computers." Emily paused, then replied, "I'm not chasing anything, Mom. I'm building something." Her mother brushed it off as if Emily had misunderstood the value of family. But Emily hadn't misunderstood. She understood it all too well. She just knew the kind of family she was building for herself would have a foundation of fairness. Still, even in solitude, Emily found moments of purpose. Her professors noticed her precision and discipline. She was invited to join a competitive coding group on campus. When she submitted a solo project for a national engineering competition and made the finalist list, she didn't tell her family. She knew the response would be lukewarm at best, redirected toward Chloe's latest photo shoot or new brand partnership. Her friends in Austin became her new support system, people who respected her mind, her work ethic, her quiet strength. They celebrated her wins in small, meaningful ways. A coffee after a good exam. A handwritten note when she fixed someone's laptop in record time. It was nothing like the applause Chloe got for simply existing, but it felt more real, more deserved. By her 3rd year, Emily was offered a paid internship at a rising tech firm in downtown Austin. It was the first time she felt she could breathe financially. She no longer had to waitress at night. She replaced her decade-old second-hand laptop with a reliable new one. And for the first time, she sent money home, just a few $100s, to help her parents with groceries and medication. She didn't say anything about it. She just transferred it to Chloe, who had offered to handle the cash stuff, since their parents weren't great with online banking. The irony wasn't lost on her, but Emily was too tired to argue. If Chloe truly handed it over, great. If she didn't, well, it wouldn't be the first time Emily's efforts were invisible. Either way, she was doing her part. Quietly, responsibly, and without expectation. She told herself one thing over and over like a mantra: I don't need recognition. I just need to know I did the right thing. But as she pushed through midterms, deadlines, and lonely nights, a quiet part of her heart wished just once someone back home would say, "Emily, we're proud of you." That moment never came. At least not yet. But as she stood taller with each new accomplishment, she knew she didn't need their validation to become the woman she was meant to be. What she was building, her career, her stability, her dignity, was hers alone. Not inherited, not gifted, not applauded, but earned. And someday when the truth surfaced, she'd have more than words. She'd have receipts. By the time Emily graduated from the University of Texas, she wasn't just a freshly minted software engineer, she was a survivor. Years of balancing coding assignments with late-night waitressing shifts, tutoring underclassmen, and fixing broken laptops for fellow students had made her tough. Every dollar she spent was one she had earned with aching feet, strained eyes, and unwavering determination. She didn't walk across that graduation stage with a crowd of cheering relatives. No one from back home made the trip. But she smiled firm and proud when her name was called. Landing her first job at a mid-sized tech company in Austin felt like stepping into a new world. The pay wasn't astronomical, but it was enough. Enough for rent in a modest one-bedroom apartment, enough for a reliable used car, enough to cover her student loans, and enough, she thought, to start giving back. Even after everything, she never stopped caring about her parents. Her father, once a mechanic at a local garage, had retired early due to worsening respiratory issues. Years of exposure to harsh chemicals and exhaust fumes had taken a toll on his lungs. Her mother, though sharp and hard-working, could only manage part-time work, now often complaining about aching joints and sleepless nights. One evening after work, Emily called her mom, holding her phone with both hands like it was something fragile. "I want to help," she said gently. "I'm making a decent salary now. Let me send some money each month, just to cover the basics, groceries, meds bills." Her mother hesitated, then sighed. "Emily, you don't need to do that. We're okay. And besides, I don't know how to deal with all those banking apps. It's all too complicated for me," Emily pressed. "It's really easy, Mom. I can set it up to go right into your account." But her mother cut her off. "Why don't you send it to Chloe? She lives here, she knows what we need. She can give it to us in cash." That suggestion sat oddly with Emily. But she didn't argue. At the time, Chloe was still living at home, occasionally posting photos about her online store and vague entrepreneurial dreams. Emily hadn't seen much concrete come from it, but she told herself Chloe's there. She can help distribute the money. So she agreed. The next day, she set up an automatic transfer. $2,500 every month wired directly into Chloe's account with a memo line that read clearly, "For Mom and Dad." Every payment made her feel a little more grounded, a little more whole, as if she were rewriting the history that had always left her on the outside. Maybe she thought this would be how they finally saw her. Not Chloe's awkward older sister, not the weird one with her nose in a laptop, but the daughter who showed up when it mattered. Each month, Emily followed the same routine. She worked hard, harder than most, living modestly, skipping vacations, ignoring trendy restaurants and fancy clothes. That $2,500 wasn't pocket change. But every time she transferred it, she imagined her parents smiling. She pictured her mother buying new shoes without guilt, her father getting his medication on time, the electric bill paid without stress. Sometimes on the weekends, she would call home. The conversations were short, often dominated by updates on Chloe's projects. But in the quiet moments, Emily would gently ask, "How are things going? Do you need anything?" And her mother would say, "Don't worry, sweetie. Chloe's been helping us so much. She's really taken charge around here." Emily would nod slowly, her throat tightening. "That's good," she'd say. "I'm glad." Her parents never mentioned her contributions, not once. But Emily assumed it was just their way, uncomfortable with direct praise, never quite knowing how to express gratitude. Still, when she heard her mother thanking Chloe for supporting the family, it stung in a way she didn't want to admit. But she swallowed it, rationalizing that maybe Chloe was the one doing the legwork, going to the store, paying the bills in person. Maybe it made sense that she got the credit. What mattered was that her parents were okay. But slowly, a quiet doubt began to grow. One day, while scrolling through Chloe's Instagram, Emily paused. A picture of Chloe in a new outfit. A designer handbag she couldn't possibly afford on her own. Captioned, "Hustle and grind. Blessed life." Another post showed Chloe at a rooftop bar, cocktail in hand, glowing with confidence. The next week, she was posing beside a rented car that looked suspiciously expensive. Emily stared at the screen, frowning. She wasn't quick to jump to conclusions. Maybe Chloe had finally launched that business she always talked about. Maybe things were finally working out. But a flicker of unease crept in. Emily knew the math. She knew how much she sent. And if even half of that money went to their parents, there shouldn't be enough left for weekly spa visits and brand new electronics. Still, she said nothing. She trusted Chloe. She wanted to believe that her little sister, despite their differences, despite the favoritism, despite everything, would never misuse that trust. But trust, as Emily was about to learn, is a fragile thing. And when it breaks everything. Emily had always believed that good deeds didn't need to be seen to be meaningful. For 2 years, she had quietly sent $2,500 every month to Chloe, trusting that her younger sister would hand it over to their parents as promised. Each transaction included the note, "For parents," and every time she asked Chloe, her sister would cheerfully confirm that everything was taken care of. Their mother occasionally sent a brief thank you text, always crediting Chloe. Emily never corrected her. After all, she wasn't doing it for recognition. She was doing it out of duty and love. But lately, things weren't adding up. It started innocently enough. One evening, while scrolling through Instagram during her commute home from work, Emily noticed Chloe's latest post. A shiny new SUV gleaming under dealership lights. The caption read, "Work hard, play harder." It didn't stop there. There were photos of Chloe dining at upscale restaurants in Richmond, toasting cocktails with friends. Another photo showed her wrist adorned with what appeared to be a Cartier watch. Emily frowned. Chloe had never mentioned getting a new job. As far as she knew, Chloe was still working on building her brand online, whatever that meant. Ben, Emily's boyfriend, noticed her hesitation. "She bought a new car?" he asked, peering over her shoulder. Emily nodded slowly. "Apparently." Ben's brow furrowed. "Didn't she say she was struggling with rent a few months ago?" "She did," Emily replied, scrolling further through Chloe's posts. Ben hesitated before speaking again. "I'm just going to say it. Are you sure the money you're sending is actually reaching your parents?" Emily blinked. She had never questioned it, not really. "She sends me a thumbs-up emoji every month when the transfer comes in. Mom says thank you. I assume they're okay." "But you're assuming Chloe is being honest," Ben said gently. "You've never asked your parents directly." Emily shook her head. "No. Mom hates using banking apps or anything tech-related. That's why I send it through Chloe." Ben leaned back in his chair. "Maybe you should double-check." Emily wanted to brush off the thought, but something about Ben's tone stayed with her. That evening, she pulled up her banking app. The transaction history was, as expected, monthly transfers to Chloe, always on time, always labeled clearly. She scrolled back through nearly 2 years of entries. Nothing was out of order. Yet a growing unease settled in her chest. The next week, Ben and Emily met with a mortgage advisor. They were planning to buy a small starter home in Austin and needed to pre-qualify for a loan. Emily had good credit, no known debts, and stable income as a software engineer. Everything should have been straightforward. But then the advisor paused mid-meeting, frowning at his screen. "There's a $5,000 balance on a credit card listed under your name," he said, turning the monitor slightly. "Issued by Liberty Bank." "Are you aware of this?" Emily's stomach dropped. "No," she said, confused. "I've never had a Liberty Bank card." Ben sat up straighter. "Are you sure positive?" The advisor nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, someone has. It's been open for almost 18 months and the payments are months behind." Emily's mind raced. She thanked the advisor, excused herself, and walked out into the parking lot trembling. Ben followed her out. Back in the car, Emily called Liberty Bank's fraud department. She verified her identity, listened carefully to the representative, and felt the color drain from her face. The card had been opened online using her name's social security number and a mailing address, her parents' house. The first few charges had been small, but over time they'd ballooned into purchases at clothing boutiques, electronics stores, and online subscription services. Whoever had opened the account hadn't even tried to conceal the spending. "Can you send me the documentation used to open the account?" Emily asked quietly. "Of course," the representative replied. "It was a digital application, but we'll email you a copy." Emily hung up and sat in stunned silence. "How bad is it?" Ben asked. "It's Chloe," Emily whispered. "It has to be. The address is my parents' house. She lives there." Ben was silent for a long moment before he said, "We need to talk to your parents. This isn't just about the money anymore. Emily stared out the window, her jaw clenched. For years, she had worked herself to exhaustion trying to support her family. She had sacrificed, stayed quiet, and even let Chloe take the credit because she thought she was doing the right thing. Now she wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Everything she thought she knew about loyalty, trust, and family was beginning to crack. And as those cracks widened, Emily realized she wasn't just protecting her bank account. She was about to uncover a betrayal that went far deeper. Emily stood in the dim light of her apartment kitchen, her hands deep in a roll of green wrapping paper, the same shade her mother had always loved. The small gift box sat neatly on the counter, holding a compact digital camera that was simple enough for her mother to use. Emily had spent hours researching one that had video calling features, thinking it might help them stay connected better. It was her mother's birthday next week, and despite everything, Emily still wanted to make her smile. But behind the quiet gesture lay a storm brewing beneath her composed surface. Ever since Ben had discovered the $5,000 credit card debt that Chloe had opened in Emily's name, the weight in her chest had grown heavier each day. Emily hadn't confronted Chloe. She hadn't even called. She just kept sending the $2,500 each month like clockwork through the same account. She updated the memo line for Mom and Dad. Chloe continued to send a short, "got it" reply every time. That was it. No conversation, no apology, no explanation. Ben watched all of this unfold in disbelief. "You know," he said one night as they sat on the couch, Emily with her laptop on her knees, "you don't have to carry this on your own." Emily didn't look up. She scrolled through her budget spreadsheet. "It's not about me. Mom and Dad need help. If I stop, they suffer." Ben leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "But they don't even know it's you. They think Chloe's the one helping. She's stealing from you, Em." Emily closed her laptop and rested her hands on it. Her eyes didn't tear up, she was far past that point. Instead, there was a quiet resignation in her voice. "I'm her big sister, Ben. I've always been stronger. I've always handled things. That's what older siblings do." Ben shook his head slowly. "Being strong doesn't mean staying silent. It doesn't mean letting yourself be invisible." Emily didn't respond, but his words lodged somewhere deep inside her. At home, things were unchanged. When she called her mother, cheerfully recounted how Chloe had picked up groceries or helped with a doctor's appointment. "She's always here when we need her," her mom said. "That girl's got such a heart. You know, not everyone would make time for family like that." Emily listened, offering a quiet, "That's good, Mom," while her throat tightened. There were so many things she could have said, so many truths she could have thrown into the conversation like sharp glass about the thousands of dollars Chloe had pocketed, the credit card fraud, the birthday gifts she herself had quietly sent in Chloe's name. But Emily said none of it. Instead, she focused on wrapping the gift. She printed out a little photo of her and Ben and tucked it into the camera case. She wrote a note on a simple card, "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope this helps you capture all your favorite moments." She didn't sign it, "Love, Emily." She simply wrote, "From me to you." That night, while placing the gift into her suitcase, Ben entered the room. "Still going?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I don't want to ruin her birthday. It's not her fault she believes Chloe." Ben walked over and knelt beside her. "But what about your pain? What about your truth?" Emily looked down at her hands, then at the camera box. "I've spent my whole life being the quiet one, the reasonable one, the one who didn't need to be celebrated. I guess I just got used to being invisible." Ben held her gaze. "But you don't have to stay that way. You have every right to be seen, to be heard." Emily sat silently for a long moment. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "If they slap me in the face one more time, I won't turn the other cheek." Ben didn't say anything. He just reached out and gently took her hand. That was the moment something inside her shifted. She hadn't yet decided what she would do or how she would do it. But for the first time, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe Just maybe she didn't have to keep proving her love by disappearing. She didn't have to be the strong one by being silent. She could still be the one who gives, but not at the cost of losing herself. And though she couldn't predict what would happen at her mother's birthday party, one thing was certain: if she was pushed again, if the truth was buried one more time beneath praise for someone who hadn't earned it, she would not stay quiet. She wouldn't let her story be rewritten. Not again. The living room was warm with laughter, golden with late afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Emily sat at the edge of the couch, a soft smile playing on her lips as she watched her mother unwrap presents surrounded by family, neighbors, and distant cousins. The daisies in the vase on the table, freshly cut from the garden, filled the air with a sweet fragrance. It was supposed to be a celebration, a simple, heartfelt gathering for her mother's 65th birthday. But something inside Emily tightened with every passing moment. She and Ben had arrived the night before after a long drive from Austin. Emily had been quiet during the ride, her thoughts swaying between hope and hesitation. In her bag was a gift she had chosen with care, a digital camera with internet connectivity designed for ease of use so her mother could capture moments and video chat with her children. Ben had helped her wrap it in green paper, her mother's favorite color, and tie it with a yellow ribbon. Emily had hoped that maybe this time it would matter. Maybe this year she'd be seen. Instead, as her mother opened a square-shaped box handed to her by Chloe, a different name flew out of everyone's mouth. "Oh, Chloe, you shouldn't have. It's beautiful. You're always so thoughtful." Chloe beamed and placed a delicate gold bracelet on their mother's wrist. "I saw it last week and thought it would suit you perfectly," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Emily's heart sank. She recognized the packaging immediately. She had wired money last week through Chloe's account to help cover groceries and utilities as usual. The amount was slightly higher than normal. She thought it might have gone to cover Dad's medication. Instead, it had gone around her and come back with a bow on it paraded as Chloe's generosity. Her mother held up the bracelet. "See, this is what it means to be close to family. Chloe always thinks of us. She's here when it matters." "Emily," her voice changed slightly, "maybe you should try learning something from your sister. She's the one who sacrifices for us. You just live your life far away." Emily's ears buzzed. She could feel the pressure behind her eyes, the heat rising in her chest. She looked over at Ben, who reached out and gently squeezed her hand under the table. His touch grounded her. For a moment she hesitated, but something had cracked. She stood up. The wooden chair scraped sharply against the floor, silencing the chatter. The room turned toward her, surprised by the sudden movement. Emily spoke softly, but every word carried weight. "If Chloe's the one taking care of everything," she said, looking at her mother, "then I guess she can continue doing that." "I'll stop sending money." Gasps echoed through the room. Someone dropped a fork. Her mother's eyes widened. "What money?" she said with a confused frown. "Emily, don't make a scene. You've never sent us anything. It's always been Chloe." Ben sat up straighter beside her but didn't speak. He knew this wasn't his moment. It was hers. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her hands didn't shake as they usually did in moments like this. She tapped through the banking app and turned the screen around for everyone to see. For the past 2 years, she said clearly, "I've sent $2,500 a month through Chloe's account. Every transfer clearly says for Mom and Dad, sometimes more when the roof needed fixing or when Dad's medication costs rose. And you think I never sent anything?" Her mother's face paled. That can't be. Chloe told us that was from her. She said she'd been saving up. She's been using my money to buy gifts, to pay her debts, to post pictures of a life she didn't earn." Chloe, standing by the dining table, froze. The confidence drained from her expression. Her shoulders tensed, and for the first time that day she had nothing to say. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. "Chloe," he said slowly, as the weight of the silence shifted to her. "Is this true?" Chloe opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her mother looked at her, pleading and panicked. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't lie to us." Still, Chloe said nothing. The bracelet on her wrist gleamed in the light, taunting everyone in the room. Emily looked not at Chloe, but at her mother. "I didn't come here to cause drama, but I won't keep being the silent one while someone else takes credit for my sacrifices." Her mother seemed to collapse inward. She sank onto the couch and covered her mouth, eyes wide and wet. The hush in the room grew heavier. From the corner, Ben finally spoke. "She didn't want recognition," he said, voice steady. "She just wanted her parents to be okay. But enough is enough." Emily didn't look triumphant. She didn't feel victorious. Just tired. The mirror of her family had cracked and everyone saw themselves in the fragments. The silence that followed Emily's revelation still lingered in the room like a cloud of smoke after a fire. Faces once beaming with celebration were now stiff with shock, shame, and disbelief. Her mother clutched the edges of the gift wrap Chloe had proudly presented just minutes earlier, her hands trembling. Then Chloe's voice broke through the silence, soft and cracking. "Me knew," she whispered, her gaze locked on the floor. Everyone turned. "What?" Emily blinked, her voice hollow, as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. "What did you just say?" Chloe's hands twisted in her lap, her makeup beginning to smear from tears. "Me knew I only gave a little, not all of it. She told me it was okay. She said it was fine to keep the rest, that you were doing well and you wouldn't mind." Emily froze. The air around her grew thin. She looked to her mother for denial, for outrage, for any sign of shock. But Monica didn't move. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes, wide and wet, darted between her daughters like a deer caught in headlights. You knew Emily's voice was quieter this time. Not angry, just broken. You let me stand there thinking I was helping you, while you let her lie to everyone. And you knew." Her mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "Chloe was going through a hard time. She's always been more sensitive, more fragile. You've always been strong, Emily. I thought you could handle it." Ben's chair creaked as he stiffened beside Emily. He didn't speak, but his eyes were locked on Monica, his jaw clenched. Emily's heart didn't race. It slowed. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't scream or lash out. It was quiet. It came wrapped in excuses and soft tones. It looked like love, but it felt like abandonment. "You thought I could handle being erased?" she asked softly. "You thought I'd be okay with being the invisible one again?" Monica shook her head, her hands reaching out. No, I just... You were so far away. I didn't want you to worry." Chloe needed the support more. Emily took a breath. Not to calm herself, but to keep her balance as the floor beneath her seemed to shift. "You think I didn't need support? You think just because I didn't cry to you on the phone that I didn't have sleepless nights, that I didn't eat instant noodles for weeks so I could send you money that never even made it to you?" Her voice remained steady. Not sharp, not cruel, just steady. And that was more terrifying than a scream. "I never asked for praise," Emily continued. "I never wanted to be the favorite. I just wanted to matter." Chloe sobbed harder now, but Emily didn't look at her. Her eyes remained on her mother, waiting, hoping for some kind of redemption. But Monica said nothing. Around the room, relatives shifted in their seats. Aunt Rita looked down at her lap, lips pressed tightly together. Uncle Jay leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in disapproval. A neighbor who had always adored Chloe rose awkwardly, muttered something about needing to get home, and slipped out. Pamela, sitting silently through it all, reached for Emily's hand under the table and gave it a gentle squeeze. Her grip said what no one else dared to. "I see you. I believe you." "I kept my silence," Emily said finally, "not because I was weak, but because I loved this family too much to cause waves. But silence isn't strength if it only protects lies." Monica opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. "You knew," Emily whispered once more, mostly to herself this time. "You knew. And you still let me be the one they looked down on." A heavy stillness followed. The golden birthday decorations swayed gently in the ceiling fan's breeze, a cruel contrast to the emotional storm in the room. Then Uncle Jay spoke up, voice low and gruff. "Emily, I didn't know. If I had, I would have said something. You didn't deserve that." Several others nodded. Aunt Rita looked at Emily and blinked away tears. "You've always been the one holding everything together. I'm sorry we didn't see it." Chloe buried her face in her hands. Monica sat still as a statue, her lips moving but producing no sound. For the first time, Emily didn't feel small in her childhood home. She didn't feel like the afterthought, the forgotten one. She felt seen, even if it took the shattering of years of illusions to get there. She turned to Pamela and whispered, "I think I'm done here." Pamela nodded. As Emily gathered her things to leave, Monica finally spoke again. "Emily, wait, please. I never meant to hurt you." Emily paused, hand on her coat. She turned slightly, not enough to look directly at her mother, but enough to be heard. "Maybe you didn't mean to," she said, "but you did." And with that, she walked out of the house where she had once been a shadow and stepped into the light of her own truth. Emily stood at the center of the living room, her hands still slightly trembling from the confrontation that had just unfolded. The silence in the room was so thick it seemed to press against her chest. Her mother sat on the couch, face pale and tight, avoiding Emily's eyes. Chloe had retreated to a corner of the room, had bowed, her once confident posture reduced to a shell of guilt. Then, in a voice that tried to sound composed but couldn't mask the sting beneath, her mother said, "You should have told us earlier, Emily. If you had said something sooner, none of this would have happened." Emily blinked, stunned. Of all the things her mother could have said after being caught in a lie, this was her response. Not remorse, not acknowledgement, blame. Her voice, though calm, cut through the room like a blade. "In this family, silence is the only thing I've ever been allowed to have." She looked directly at her mother, not with anger, but with a firm, unwavering disappointment. "I stayed silent because every time I spoke up, I was told I was jealous, bitter, difficult. Every word I said was twisted. So I stopped speaking." Her mother's mouth opened, then closed again. No words came. "I kept sending money because I thought it was the right thing to do. Because I still loved you. Because even after being ignored, overlooked, and replaced, I believed I could still be a daughter who made you proud even in silence." Emily continued, her voice tightening slightly. "But now I know. You didn't want a daughter who worked hard and helped quietly. You wanted one who sparkled loud enough for everyone to see, even if it was all a lie." Chloe finally raised her head. Her eyes were red and swollen cheeks streaked with tears. Her voice was small, cracking. "Emily, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't plan for it to go this far. I just wanted to make Mom proud. Just once. I thought if she saw me as successful, she'd stop being disappointed in me." Emily looked at her younger sister. This wasn't the same confident Chloe who used to soak in the praise at every family event. This was a broken version stripped of illusion. And for the first time, Emily didn't feel angry. She felt sad. Deeply, profoundly sad. "You wanted her to be proud of you," Emily said, her voice soft now but steady. "And you thought the only way to get that was to take from me. To lie. To let me disappear while you stood in my place. You thought her love was limited, that she could only give it to one of us. And I guess, maybe you were right." Chloe covered her face with her hands, sobbing. But Emily didn't reach out. Not this time. She turned to her mother. "You let her do it. You knew, and you didn't stop her. You looked me in the eye and thanked her for the money I sent. You let me live as the forgotten daughter while you called her the faithful one. I don't care how strong you think I am. No one deserves to be used like that." Her mother tried to speak, but Emily cut her off with a simple, quiet sentence. "You don't get to hurt me twice." The room felt colder, smaller, but clearer. "I'm not here to yell or demand anything. I'm done trying to prove I'm enough." But I am here to say this, there will be boundaries now, Emily continued. You may not like them, but I'm no longer the girl who keeps quiet for the sake of keeping peace. She walked toward the door, then turned once more to face them. Chloe, I believe you're sorry, but sorry doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't give me back the dignity I lost the nights I stayed up wondering why I was never enough. I don't hate you, but I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Chloe looked up through her tears. I understand. Emily nodded. It wasn't vengeance she sought, it was honesty, fairness, and a voice. As she opened the door, she could feel the weight lifting. Her silence had once been her prison, but today it had been broken not with rage, but with truth. She didn't slam the door behind her. She simply walked out. And for the first time in years, Emily didn't feel small. She felt free. It had been 3 weeks since Emily walked out of her parents' house on her mother's birthday. In that time, there had been no dramatic confrontations, no screaming phone calls, just silence. Not the suffocating kind she had endured growing up, but a quiet space she had chosen, one that allowed her to think clearly and breathe on her own terms. She wasn't sure what she expected, maybe guilt, maybe denial. But when her mother finally called, the voice on the other end was different, softer, measured, not demanding, not defensive, just open. Can we talk? Her mother had asked. Just you and me, no one else. They met at a quiet diner halfway between Austin and home, a place that smelled of brewed coffee and worn-in leather booths. Emily didn't dress up for the meeting. She didn't need to. This wasn't about appearances. It was about truth. Her mother came alone, hair pulled back, hands wringing a paper napkin as she sat across from her eldest daughter. The waitress brought coffee. Neither of them touched it. I've been thinking, Monica began, voice almost inaudible, about everything, about how I let it all get so twisted. Emily waited. I'm not going to make excuses, Monica continued. I let Chloe lie. I let you carry the burden, and I turned a blind eye when it was easier than facing what was really happening. I failed you. Emily's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. I want to make things right, her mother said. I don't know how, but I'm ready to listen. Emily nodded slowly. Then let's start with this. Things are going to change. Monica looked up, eyes glassy but steady. I'm not cutting you off. I'm not walking away, Emily said. But if I'm going to stay in this family, we're going to do it on new terms. Her voice was calm but firm, no longer asking to be heard, but expecting it. First, I want the comparisons to stop. You don't get to praise one of us by putting the other down. No more, why can't you be like your sister? We're not tools for measuring each other's worth. Monica nodded. Okay. Second, Emily continued. No more going through Chloe. I've opened a joint account with your name on it. From now on, the money goes directly to you. You'll see exactly what comes in and how it's meant to be used, and I expect you to be transparent with me if things change. Another nod, slower this time. Fair. And lastly, Emily said, pausing slightly, Chloe needs to contribute, not just pretend. If she's going to live under your roof and be treated as an adult, she has to act like one. No more funding her lifestyle while she posts selfies and spends weekends at brunch. Monica swallowed hard. She started applying to jobs. She needs to keep one, Emily replied. She needs to feel what it's like to earn and give back. That's how you grow. That's how you earn forgiveness, not by asking for it, but by proving you've changed. Her mother wiped at her eyes. You're right. You're absolutely right. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was cautious but hopeful, like a window slowly being opened after a long winter. Later that week, Chloe sent Emily a short, nervous message, starting part-time at the garage on Monday. It's not glamorous, but it's a job. Emily replied simply, that's a start. Over the following month, Emily watched from a distance. True to her word, Chloe kept the job at the auto repair shop. She worked the front desk, learned to manage inventory, even helped clean the bays. Every 2 weeks, she transferred $150 into the family account, $300 a month. It wasn't much, but Emily didn't care about the amount. What mattered was the effort. Then one day, as they sat in the backyard under the fading light of a Sunday afternoon, Chloe sat down beside Emily with a soda in hand and a strange look on her face. "You know," Chloe said quietly when we were kids, "Mom used to say stuff to me too. Not like what she said to you, but in the other direction." Emily raised an eyebrow. Chloe stared ahead. "She used to say I'd never be as smart as you, that I should try to be less dramatic like you, that I needed to stop needing attention all the time. I used to think, if I could just make her proud for once, maybe she'd stop comparing us." Emily didn't speak right away. The confession lingered between them, soft but sharp. "We were both trying to win the same love," Emily finally said. "But we thought the other one already had it." Chloe nodded, eyes still fixed on the garden. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I really am." "I know," Emily said. "But knowing isn't the same as undoing." "I'm not asking you to forget," Chloe whispered. "Just let me rebuild. Slowly." Emily didn't reach out. She didn't offer a hug, but she didn't walk away either. She stayed, and that for now was enough. The autumn light in Austin had a warmth to it that made everything feel softer. The trees lining the small garden courtyard turned golden, and the breeze carried the faint scent of rosemary and white roses, Emily's favorite. She and Ben had chosen to keep their wedding small and intentional. No grand halls, no elaborate chandeliers, just the people who mattered, the vows they meant, and a quiet kind of joy. Emily stood before the mirror in her modest ivory dress, adjusting the bracelet on her wrist, one that wasn't gold or expensive, but held meaning. It had been a gift from Pamela, engraved simply, "You're more than enough." When she stepped outside to where the guests had gathered, the applause came gently, sincerely. She met Ben's eyes and felt her heart steady. This wasn't a moment about proving anything. It was a beginning built on truth. Among the guests sat her mother, Monica, quietly dabbing her eyes. There was no speech prepared, no tension in the air. Just presence. Chloe sat 2 rows back, hands folded in her lap, nodding as Emily passed. They had spoken more in the last few weeks than they had in the past 2 years. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but it was honest. Or so Emily had thought. After the ceremony, while Emily made her way through small conversations and congratulations, she overheard a voice behind the garden arch. "She left," Chloe was saying, "and I had to be the one holding everything together, taking care of Mom and Dad all alone. It wasn't easy." The words hit her like a slow, familiar bruise. Emily didn't react immediately. She stood still, listening. Not angry, just disappointed. Chloe's voice had changed over the months, but clearly not enough. The story was still being told wrong. The truth was still being bent. Ben noticed her stiffen and leaned in. "What's wrong?" Emily whispered. "Can you ask the ushers to move Chloe to the outer seating area? Somewhere past the family rows." Ben paused, searching her face. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I don't want a scene. I just want a boundary." He squeezed her hand and slipped away to carry out the request. Chloe didn't fight it. She noticed the change in placement during the dinner, blinked, and seemed to understand. She didn't speak to Emily for the rest of the evening. And that was fine. Later that night, after the last dance and the final hugs, Emily sat on the edge of the bed in their hotel suite, still in her dress, her hair slightly undone. She reached for a leather-bound journal in her bag and opened to a fresh page. She began to write slowly, not to let go of bitterness, but to finally lay it to rest. "Dear Mom, I'm writing this not to reopen wounds, but to close the ones that have quietly shaped me for most of my life. Today was my wedding day. It was simple, small, and full of people who saw me as I am not who they wished I could be. I don't carry anger anymore. I carry clarity. I know now that love isn't something to earn by shrinking or sacrificing until nothing's left. I know now that being quiet doesn't make me graceful if it also makes me invisible. And I know now that your approval isn't the oxygen I once thought I needed. I hope you're proud of me, but I no longer depend on it. I'm happy, and I'm building a life where I don't have to disappear to belong. With peace. Emily. She closed the journal and placed it beside the lamp. As she changed into pajamas and slipped beneath the covers, Ben turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "How are you feeling?" he asked. She smiled. Lighter. They lay in silence for a while, the hum of distant streetlights filling the room. In her heart, the past still lived, but it no longer controlled her. She hadn't become louder. She hadn't become cruel. She had simply stopped letting herself be erased. "I'm not louder," she thought. "I'm just no longer invisible. If you've stayed with us through this story, thank you." Emily's journey may have been fictional, but her struggle to be seen, to be heard, and to set boundaries is something many of us can relate to, especially when it comes to family. Maybe you've been the strong one, the quiet one, the one expected to endure without complaint. Or maybe you've been Chloe, searching for approval and making mistakes along the way. What matters is growth. What matters is truth. And what matters most is learning that love doesn't require self-erasure. We'd love to know your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose peace over being polite? Have you ever been forced to walk away to finally be seen? Share your story in the comments. We read everyone. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think a little differently about your own journey, consider subscribing to our channel. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about resilience, redemption, and reclaiming your worth. Because sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that finally stops whispering. We'll see you in the next story.